just got out of theaters from seeing Ryan Coogler's new film, Sinners, on the big screen, and I couldn't be more excited to discuss this film, talk about this movie. So without further ado, guys, let's get into the movie review for Sinners. Let's go. Sinners is a new horror adventure film written and directed by Ryan Coogler and stars Michael B. Jordan as the Moore brothers, who are a set of twins, Elijah and Elias, or as this movie refers to them as, Smoke and Stacks. Now, Michael B. Jordan is playing both twin brothers inside of this film. He is playing both roles, two versions of himself almost, and you know, this film really brings out his acting prowess, which we'll get into much later in the video. But first, let's get into the plot of this movie. This is a period piece set in 1932 Mississippi, and in this movie, trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their Mississippi hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. Now, what is that greater evil that's waiting to welcome them back? Well, as you've seen in the trailer for this movie, it's not a spoiler, it's vampires. Now, a lot of this film is realism. It's set in 1932, it's set in this time period, and through most of it, it's very normal. But once you get to a certain part of this film, it turns, you know, a lot more supernatural, you can say. And we're going to discuss that all inside this video. Now, let's begin with my positives for the movie Sinners. And for my first positive with this movie, I want to talk about the social commentary inside of this film. Now, being as this movie is directed and written by a black director, it stars an entire black cast, and it's set in 1932 America, this film dives very heavily into the black struggles at that time, such as Jim Crow, racism, prejudice. So, you know, if any of these topics make you uncomfortable, a lot of that is inside of this movie. Now, while at times this film directly touches on it, such as, you know, the Ku Klux Klan at that time, which ends up playing a small role inside of this movie, it also uses the vampires as an allegory at times for things that were happening to black people in the 1930s. Now, there's plenty of different ways you could look at this and you can analyze this film, and I'm sure, you know, from this point going forward throughout the years, there's going to be plenty of different video essays diving into and breaking down different parts of this movie. But for a general positive overall, I just wanted to mention that the social commentary is definitely here inside of this film. Now, that brings us to my next positive with this movie, and that is the vampires. Now, like I said, at a certain point in this movie, it does turn supernatural, and that's because vampires play a significant role inside of this film. And I love how Ryan Coogler implemented the vampires into this movie, because he takes a very traditional approach to the vampires for this film. For instance, they can't come out in sunlight burns them. They have to be invited inside of your house, which is like a very, you know, old vampire myth. They're disgusted and harmed by garlic, silver, things like that. You know, a very stereotypical approach to vampires, but done in a very interesting way with an element added into this, and that element is music. Now, we'll make an overall point about the music in another positive right after this, but to touch on how the vampires use it inside of this film, they're very lively, they're playing music all the time, they're attracted to music even, which is how they even come across our main characters inside of this movie, is someone is playing very beautiful music around them, which is why the vampires find them in the first place. Now, the vampires come preaching peace, prosperity, unity, things like this. They're singing like very upbeat, happy sounding songs and lyrics, which from a horror perspective is genius. It's horrifying watching these creatures of the night try to lure you in with kindness and things that they think will appeal to a human being's soul. Now, when they're appearing human, they're creepy, they're eerie, but you know, once you see more of their vampiric form, you watch their claws come out, the teeth come out, their eyes change colors. I thought that was all done brilliant. I love the portrayal of vampires inside of this film, and I think Ryan Coogler did a great job with this. Now, let's move into my next positive, that being the music overall inside of this film. Now, the soundtrack for this movie is very strong, but as I mentioned, music plays a significant role in this movie overall, because a very important character inside of this movie is the Moore's brothers' little cousin. Now, their little cousin is called Preacher Boy. That's like his nickname. That's what they call him inside of this movie, so that's what I'm going to call him for this review. And Preacher Boy is, of course, the son of a preacher who has an innate gift for music, whether it comes to playing the music or singing it. Either way, he has a very powerful sound that, as this movie states, allures and attracts evil spirits. Now, you get a lot of musical scenes here, musical sequences. There's one really great one where we watch the Moore brothers open up like a blues house, kind of a bar for people to go to. And while the music is being performed inside of this scene, we get to see, you know, a blend of a ton of different generations of black culture, of hip hop music and the blues and anything else, you know, rock and roll, all these different types of genres and time periods blend together in this one scene. And it was beautifully done. I thought that was masterful of Coogler inside of this film. Now, it's all performed at the highest level. You can listen to this music, you know, outside of this movie, and you could still have a great time listening to it. It's just so well done here, and I can't stress that anymore. Now, let's move on to my next positive. For my next positive, I want to talk about Michael B. Jordan. Now, I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the video, but let's really hone in on that, okay? Let's talk about how great Michael B. Jordan really is inside of this film. Now, I've stated it for a while on my channel, and I'm gonna state it again, okay? Michael B. Jordan is in my top 5 actors acting currently, you know, in the modern day right now. I think this guy's amazing. I love what he's done with his past roles, and more specifically, I love what he did with his role here inside of Sinners, because like I said, you really get to see his acting displayed and showcased for the audience, because he's playing 2 different characters at once. How they did this, I don't know. We've seen it done in other movies before, such as like The Social Network, for example, the twins inside that movie, and you kind of get something similar here, except to a whole nother level, because the 2, you know, distinct personalities, while they're very similar because they're twins, they're unique in their own personalities. They have their own lives, their own love interests. They interact with each other in these scenes quite frequently inside of this movie. There's even a fight scene between himself inside of this film, which is crazy. It's very well done. I loved seeing that inside of this film. And then as we seen inside of the trailer, again, this is not a spoiler. I'm not telling you guys anything you didn't get to see inside the initial trailer for this movie. As we seen in the trailer, right, Michael B. Jordan, one of his versions does end up becoming a vampire. Now, because of that, we almost get 3 different versions of Michael B. Jordan portraying, you know, different characters here, and it's all done at the highest level. I couldn't commend him more for this role, for his acting here. This guy's a genius, okay? And I can't wait to see what else he does in the future of his acting career, especially when he's partnered with Ryan Coogler, which they've done quite a few films together up to this point. Now, let's move into my next positive with this movie. And for my next positive, we're going to touch on the horror elements for this film. Now, is it scary? Is it horrifying? Is it too scary to go see? Personally, for me, I didn't really think so, but for others, I could see this being pretty horrifying. You get some great jump scare scenes here, nothing cheap, nothing overused like you've seen in bad horror movies. No, everything here is done with purpose, and when it hits, it really hits. It even got me a couple times throughout this movie. I don't particularly find vampires that scary. You know, I've watched plenty of movies, played plenty of games that involved vampires, so to me, I just found it interesting. But if you're someone who's terrified by the idea of, you know, this creature of the night, this bloodsucker, then yeah, this is probably going to be a scary movie to you particularly. Now, I love the way that they build it up throughout this film, you know, the way that they approach the vampiric horror here, which you touched on, you know, mostly earlier in the video during the vampire section, how friendly and inviting they try to come across when really they're just trying to turn you into one of them and suck your blood. And yeah, the vampires inside of this movie are definitely horrifying, okay? Long gone are the days of Twilight. You know, now we have Nosferatu just dropped before this, and now we have Sinners. So scary vampires are back, and I think they're here to stay. There was even one more with the little girl. I forget what that movie's called. I'm sure you know which movie I'm talking about, but I would say overall it's more thrilling that it is horrifying. You know, it gets your blood running a little bit, but it's not like, oh my goodness, this was so scary that I can't even watch this a second time type of film. In fact, I think this is going to be something that I watch many times throughout the year and for years to come. Now, that being said, let's move on to my final positive for this section of the video. For my final positive, it would have to be the overall cast for this film. All of these characters are memorable, they're distinct in their personalities and the way they interact with the main characters characters inside of this film. For instance, Hailee Steinfeld as Mary, who's sort of like the half-breed inside of this film, or, you know, the mixed race person. And she's sort of the love interest for one of the brothers inside of this movie. So there's this whole, you know, backstory and element there between their characters, which was fantastic here. And you get some emotional scenes between them. And I love the way she interacts with this world because, you know, from the outside, she looks like this regular Caucasian girl. But when she interacts with these characters inside of the movie, they're very taken aback by the way she speaks, the way she talks to them, the way she acts. And I thought that was all fantastic. Now, as far as the other cast members, there's Omar Benson Miller inside of this movie who plays the character Cornbread. That's like his nickname inside of this film. And I honestly haven't seen him in anything since 8 Mile, a very, very long time ago. I don't know what roles he's been playing, but yeah, it was nice to see him included inside of this movie. He played a great role. He has some funny scenes inside of here and, you know, some more scary and horrifying scenes inside of here. We also had Miles Catone as Preacher Boy, who sort of opens up this film. You know, the movie begins with him, so he's a very important character here. While I wouldn't consider him the main character, it's more so Michael B. Jordan. That's who you're with for a majority of this film. Preacher Boy is right there alongside him the entire time. He can damn near be considered the main character himself inside of this film. And I love the way his role was played and, you know, his aspect inside of this film. And so many other characters that are just, like I said, distinct. They stick out, they're unique, and they stick with you. I remember all of their names after watching this film, which quite honestly doesn't happen very often now. With that being said, this is usually where I'd move into my negatives for the movie Sinners, but to be quite honest with you guys, I don't really have any negatives with this movie, which is very rare for me. It's happened maybe one other time on the channel, but you know, off first viewing, off first watch, I loved everything we got here. In fact, I think I got a little extra in terms of what I expected to see here and what I wanted out of this movie, at least from what I got to see inside of the trailer. Now, there's so many interesting plot points that I want to get into, that I want to talk about, but because we're in the non-spoiler section of this video, we're not going to do that. So I'm just going to move into my overall review for the movie Sinners. Guys, this was the best theatrical experience I've had this year so far. Hopefully there's more to come throughout this year in the future, but up to this date, up to this point, this was the best movie I've seen in theaters. I love that it's a period piece. I love the time it's set in. I love, you know, all of the elements, all of the different social commentaries that it addresses. I love that it goes over how life was for Black people in the South, in Mississippi during this time, the way they had to think, the way they had to live, the things they believe in, their religion that they're taught, which was another great element here, by the way. Of course, it's called Sinners, and when this movie opens, it kind of opens with a church, kind of closes with a church. So the religious elements here, along with the concept of being a sinner, is throughout this entire film. The cast is extremely strong. The characters are distinct. They're unique. They're memorable. The plot here is strong. The concept is interesting. The vampires are done justice here. I love the way that they were portrayed. The writing and the directing here, excellent work done by Ryan Coogler. The acting is top notch, and the runtime for this film is 2 hours 17 minutes. So my only negative, my only complaint with this movie is that I didn't get more of it as soon as I left the theater. You know, once I got back home, once I got back to the studio to record this, the first thing I thought was, I just want to talk about this film more. I just want to exist in that world for a bit longer, like I was when I was watching this inside of the theater. I wanted to explore more of the elements here, learn more about these characters, learn more about, you know, the supernatural inside of here. And I think I've spoken as highly as I could about this movie. So with that being said, let's give you guys my rating for this film. I give Ryan Coogler Sinners a 10 out of 10. It gets the 10 out of 10 rating, guys. I think this is a master class. I think that this is something we're going to be watching for years to come. After this movie comes out, there's going to be, you know, video essay upon video essay throughout the years of people diving into so many different elements here, different things that you can consider, things you're going to notice on a second time watching it. And yeah, so many different themes to go over here that are layered inside of this movie, which I really liked. You know, it kind of reminds me of the movie Get Out, for instance. That's another movie with tons of social commentary. That's a horror film, and while it doesn't go supernatural, it's more science fiction. It's still very comparable to this movie, and it's still being analyzed to this day and I could see the same thing happening here with Sinners. Now, I do want to touch on a couple more things here, so we are going to talk spoilers, but if you want to skip the spoiler section and just, get to the sign out portion of this video, you can go ahead and do that with the chapters down below in the description. You should also see them layered. As you watch this video, it should be, somewhere towards the bottom of your screen. Now, with that being said, let's get into my spoilers for the movie Sinners. And for this section of the video, I'm going to talk a bit more freely. We're not going to be, as by the book as going down my list of notes that I had for this film. We're just going to kind of bounce all over the place, okay? So let's talk about the Moore brothers. Let's talk about Smoke and Stacks. I loved these guys inside of this film, or this guy, of course, it's just Michael B. Jordan, but I mean, it feels so authentic. You really believe that these are two different characters when you watch this movie. And I love their backstory here that it dives into. I love that these guys, of course, grew up on Mississippi on a plantation, that, they made their way out to Chicago. They became gangsters, probably in Mississippi, but were definitely gangsters out there. They pretty much, robbed some people there, the movie alludes to. And then they came back here to sell off everything that they stole from there, which was pretty much a bunch of liquor, right? They had cases and cases upon liquor, which is why they opened like sort of a bar type of thing here. Now, I loved seeing that inside of this movie. I loved seeing Michael B. Jordan play this gangster type character. He was shooting people in broad daylight in the street. It was crazy the way he was handling business inside of this movie, okay? And I honestly wanted to see more of that. I would love to see these guys go to Chicago. I'd love to see what they did there in Chicago, the way that they operated their business. Like, everything outside of the supernatural element here inside of this movie was extremely interesting, and so much so that I damn near wish we got a series of this. Now, do I really want a series of this? No. I'd rather just get a sequel film, and much sooner rather than later, quite honestly. But yeah, that was all very interesting. Now, let's talk about like the Native Americans here, okay? They got a very, very small scene inside of this movie, but again, it was absolutely fascinating. I love the fact that they included the Native Americans here, that they were chasing down this vampire. They had that boy on the run, okay? They had a whole army hunting him down. He ends up at this white couple's house, living out in the middle of nowhere, damn near in Mississippi. Of course, they draw a gun on this vampire who, from the outside, looks like just a normal white man who's scared and running from something. He offers them gold, says, hey, you let me in, I'll give you this gold, you keep me safe from these guys. And of course, that is the grave, that is the mortal mistake that they make here inside of this film. They invite this guy in. The Native Americans get there, say, hey, you don't really know what you're dealing with, we are looking for this guy. But seeing as, they're both white people, I'm sure there's kind of like a we're going to protect one of our own thing, especially considering they had a Klan hood behind them. When you watch this movie, pay attention to that, right? They have a KKK outfit sitting there in plain view, right behind the couple who's opening the door, which means they more than likely have like this white power, white unity type of ideology. Now, because of that, they end up trusting this guy who's actually pretty much a demon that they let inside of their house, and who they view to be their enemies, this different race, these Native Americans. The people that they're trying to protect this guy from are actually their friends and are actually trying to help them and keep them safe. And because they don't listen, they let him in, they end up dead for it. Right after this scene happens, I mean, as soon as they close the door, her husband's already dead, and we could assume, that she dies very soon after that. So that was fascinating. Native Americans knowing the lore, they have tons of myths inside of their mythology, inside of their Native American folklore, and you can dive into this. You can go down the rabbit hole, Wendigos, all this type of stuff that I'm into. It kind of blends and mixes with the occult, but also it's just like, folklore, and it's all very fascinating. Go dive into that. Go search up Wendigos, okay? I bet you that's a crazy rabbit hole once you go down that, if you don't know about it already. Now, I also want to touch on the mid-credit scene and the end-credit scene, which I wish I said earlier in the video. Who knows, maybe I'll include it in there. But yeah, there is a mid-credit scene, there is an end-credit scene to this film. So, in terms of a mid-credit scene, I thought this was the best after-credit scene inside of this whole movie. Between the two scenes is what I'm comparing here, because we get more to the story here, okay? So Preacher Boy lives. He of course has like this hand burn mark on his face from the vampire being like set on fire from the sun while holding his face. So he's kind of just has this permanent like slash scar almost inside of his face. And yeah, we see Preacher Boy when he's much older. He's living in the city now. He's an old man inside of this scene. It skips all the way from 1932 to 1992. So, you know, he's lived a long, full life after the events that occur inside of this movie. And he's still performing music to that day, which I love to see. Of course, he has like this gift from God. Music seems to be just in his soul and his blood. So, of course, he's still performing to that day. Now, who walks into this bar? One of the Morris brothers, you know, Michael B. Jordan and Hailee Steinfeld. Both of their characters walk into this bar. They look not a day older than they were in 1932 Mississippi. I thought that was fantastic. A fantastic scene there from Ryan Coogler, okay? Immortal vampires, again, very typical to the vampire lord there. And I thought that was great. And I love the conversation that they have there. I love that it adds context to a scene we seen earlier in the movie, which I'll definitely want to touch on that too. But, you know, in this scene that happened earlier in the movie, we randomly see when the vampires are attacking everyone that Michael B. Jordan's character, he grabs Hailee Steinfeld. They go, hey, let's get out of here. Let's run. And I'm like, okay, why are the vampires running? Why they just got out of there? What just happened in that scene? I noticed it immediately, but it doesn't particularly tell you what happens until you get to the mid-credit scene at the end of this movie. Now, he pretty much tells Preacher Boy that, yeah, I made a deal with my brother, you know, he would let me live and I go run out of here. And yeah, the only part of the deal is that I can't come to you. I can't come find you. I can't harm you. You know, I got to let you live out your life. So that's what I'm doing. You know, I'm honoring my word to my brother. I'm letting you live out your life. And I thought that was a great scene. You know, they got a little conversation between each other. They're the only people, you know, living that know the events that took place that day, how horrifying it truly was. And Preacher Boy even says, hey, once a week I wake up paralyzed out of fear from what happened that day, but at the same time it was the best day of my life, you know, before the sun went down, before the sunset. And I thought that was magnificent. I loved that scene so much. He kind of looked like a rapper now. That's what one of the Morris brothers, you know, looked like here. I can't remember if it's Smoke or Stax that survived, you know, in vampire form. He didn't really survive. Of course, they're the living dead, okay? In vampire form, he looked like a rapper. He even had like a little, you know, the rapper ring across all the knuckles. It said Stax on it. Oh, there's our answer right there. Okay, it was Stax. Stax survived it. Stax was the living vampire in modern day. Him and Hailee Steinfeld's character Mary, and they hadn't aged a day. And I thought that was a fantastic scene. Okay, I love that mid-credit scene. Now let's talk the end scene here. It's not really as important. Quite honestly, majority of the audience left before both of these scenes, so I feel bad for them. They missed all this extra context. But for the end credit scene, we have a song by Preacher Boy. Again, the music in this movie is fantastic. Okay, we have a song being performed by Preacher Boy, and that's really it. You just get him singing, and that's really all you get to see. If he was like, it looked like he was like in the church of his father's church. Okay, now let's take a few steps back. Let's talk about some earlier scenes that happen inside of this movie. Again, I love that the vampires have to like tempt you to letting them in. I love that you can have your door wide open, but unless you give them permission to come into your house, to come into your space, your building, whatever building you're occupying, they simply cannot do it. Okay, they need permission to enter. Why that is, I don't really know. Again, it's just something supernatural there. This is like a very old myth with vampires. And honestly, as soon as I get done recording, editing, uploading this video, I'm going to dive very deep into not only this movie, but just vampire lore in general. Because I'm into all that type of stuff. Now, when everything breaks off, of course, the vampire come and visit them at their bar. They go, hey, we heard that beautiful music. You know, let us in. We got money to spend here. We have music to play ourselves here. They even did like a little live performance outside trying to get invited in. But luckily they did not. Now, unfortunately, of course, they send Mary. They send Hailee Steinfeld out there because she looks like the white person in this group of black people. So they send her out there to talk to the actual white people. Again, this is all very important movie context, okay? Don't get upset with all the type of race stuff that we're talking inside of this movie. I know that upsets a certain type of crowd, a certain type of audience. It's all very important to this movie, so there's no other way I can state it, okay? Anyway, they send Hailee Steinfeld out there. They talk to the vampires pretty much. Okay, they talk to the vampires, she gets bitten herself, then of course she comes to the door, they invite her in. Unfortunately, she comes in, and that's pretty much how the infection starts. Now again, if you want to talk social commentary with this movie, again, I didn't super dive into it earlier in the positive section, but if you want to talk social commentary, there's a bit to be said there, right? How she is like the only half white person in this group of black people, and then of course the vampires are all white people, and then you kind of see this infection come in through her and it ends up into this group. Now, whatever you want to say about that, you can say it. It's just something I noticed, and it was very particularly done inside of this movie. But it wasn't just, you know, black people there. There was also like this Asian couple that came and helped them with their event, so that was cool to see. You even got to see a bit of their history here inside of this movie, and that was great. Now, of course, they are the ones that made the grave mistake, another big mistake inside of this movie, and that being that the vampires were preying on the Asian woman's like emotional side, you know, her attachment to her children, her husband. They mentioned her child, so she just freaked the hell out. She goes, well, come on in here, you know, mother effers, whatever the hell she said in the movie. And yeah, they came on in all right, and all hell absolutely broke loose. That was a very upsetting part, because I'm like, you guys could have just waited it out till sundown, and outside of the very few people that you lost, you all would have been pretty much alive. Instead, everyone ends up dying, unfortunately, outside of like one person, two people, a couple people maybe, and that was all crazy. Now, let's talk about another scene that happened, okay? And it's, again, towards the end of the movie. It kind of ends the movie. And it's that Michael B. Jordan, as the character Smoke survives what happens during the vampire attack. And when he does, he goes and gets this big ass gun. I don't know what the hell type of gun this one. This was like trench warfare type of weapon, because again, more of the backstory there. Him and his brother were military, okay? Now the vampires let them in on a little secret, because again, something I didn't really touch on with the vampires, they work like a hive mind. They all know each other's thoughts, ideas. They all know each other's memories, histories, which again was fascinating. I've never seen vampires portrayed in that type of way. So shout out to Coogler for that. But yeah, they went to the racist house while hiding away from the Native Americans, and they made one of those racists a vampire. So because of that, they have knowledge that he was in the Klan and who the Klan leaders are and all that type of stuff. And the vampires do end up telling our main characters, hey, I kind of saved you from the Klan, from these racists, right? Because I know all their thoughts, and here's what they were going to do to you. They were going to come kill you after they sold you that property. So knowing that info, Michael B. Jordan, which I know Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan had a fantastic time making this scene in particular, he grabs this big ass gun, trench warfare, and when the KKK pulls up to that barn that they purchased, he chops them all the hell down, okay? One by one, took out an entire army by himself like a G. Like I said, Michael B. Jordan gets to play a G inside of this movie. He gets to play a straight gangster inside of this movie. Now, that was a fantastic, just over-the-top fun scene to add at the end of this horrifying movie. And like I said, I'm sure they had a great time recording that scene, getting to chop down the Klan. Again, more social commentary there, if you want to talk about it, if you want to discuss it. Now, unfortunately, he's not invincible, you know, so he does take a bullet. Of course, he fought an entire army. The fact that he only took one bullet while he was a one man against an entire army is some G shit, okay? He did an amazing job there, but he does take a bullet to the gut, and we see him dying pretty quickly. He's dying in front of like the leader of the Klan. They're kind of the last two alive, both with bullet holes inside of them. And he's begging him. He's saying, you know, let me live. I got money. I got this. I got that. And he chops that dude the hell up. Just straight up lights him up, puts bullets all types of ways through him. It was crazy to see, okay? Very like Quentin Tarantino-esque way to end a film, right? You know, Tarantino's known for those extremely violent endings to his movies, or violent films in general. So that was cool to see. And we also get to see, you know, again, more backstory here. One of the black characters, like this woman type, witch type character, whatever you want to call her, she's like practicing like root magic, things like that. You know, it dives very heavily into stuff that Southern black people at this time believed in, and I'm sure in their lineage still believe it. I'm sure it's still passed down in some sort of way today. Now, we've seen other movies touch on it in the past, but for this movie in particular, you know, it sort of plays a role here. And she of course had a baby with Smoke inside of this movie, okay? Her and Smoke had a baby. Their child passed away very young inside of this movie when it was still a baby. They visit the grave inside of this film. Again, a lot of backstory here. We're in the spoiler section so we could talk about all of that, okay? Now in this scene, which hopefully you've seen the movie if you're watching the spoiler section, in this scene, he sees his ex-lover, he sees the mother of his child, and she's feeding the baby, and she's like, hey, you could hold him, you know, here you go. Come on over to the side of the dead. Come on, pass on over here. Now, me personally, I'm not trying to pass over there, okay? I want to stay here amongst the living personally. But yeah, he doesn't really have nothing to live for. He lost his brother. He's lost all his love interests. He's lost a lot of family members. And yeah, he passes right on over. And that's sort of where we see the end of Smoke inside of this film. Now, for the most part, that's pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. You know, I got to finally get it all out because, man, as soon as I got done watching this film, I couldn't wait to talk about it. I couldn't wait to tell all you guys, you know, my experience with this movie, to break this movie down, to talk spoilers about this movie. I wanted to go watch a ton of videos about it, but I don't like to record these movie reviews after already seeing other people's review. I feel like it skews my own review. I start to use sort of some of their own dialogue and points that they made almost without knowing. So I don't watch any movie reviews at all, not at all, before I record. All I see is the trailer and then the movie itself, and that's it. Other than that, you know, straight from the notes or straight off the dome here. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the spoiler section for this video. And yeah, it's time for me to sign us out. Okay, so those are my thoughts on Ryan Coogler's new film, Sinners. I'd love to know your thoughts on this film down in the comment section down below. And if you don't know what we do here on Demigod ENT, we do film and TV reactions and reviews, along with other movie-based content. So if you're interested in this movie-based content, in the right place, hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.